a warm welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for braving the cold and getting up so early in the morning to be here. And a big thank you to Leanne and Ross Drakes for inviting us to come and talk to you today. It's a really huge honor. My name is Zanele Kumalo, and this is my sister Zodwa. She was born 1 year and 11 days after me, which is, I think, quite a large part of the reason that we're here today, that kind of serendipity. And we are DJs, as you've heard, apart from being writers and journalists, and we've got a track that we'd like to play for you to just set the tone for today and warm up the session. It's called Cab Driver by Anthony Valadez. And we feel that, there are quite a few takeouts.
You know, it doesn't matter what anybody else says. You've got to have faith and you've got to keep going, and that's the key, you know.
Do you still have faith?
No, totally. I mean, it doesn't matter what other people say. I mean, everybody else can say, well, that's a lot of crap.
Yeah.
And that's fair enough, but, you know, because if you don't believe you're the best, then don't get out of bed. You know, yeah. So who's your favorite musician?
Okay, so this is us, two Kumalo sisters who grew up in quite a big family, a very woman-strong family. And even though I was the second born, my full name is Zanele, actually, which means enough girls. But it didn't stop more from coming along. But luckily, being part of such a big family means that, you know, we learned how to, you know, listen and compromise very, very early on. We kind of believed and practiced the word feminism even before we knew how to even say the word. And along with becoming adept at fighting for a place in the world, we also find it very comfortable to rely on others, which is why I'm actually doing this and why I'm sort of doing it, because we get to do it together. Also, it's the first instance we feel of serendipity and beginning to understand the phenomenon of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. This is according to Merriam-Webster's definition. I think Sword and I both agree that art, music, fashion, and writing were not things that we actually hunted for in the first few years of our lives, but they kind of came around in the scrapbooks of recycled paper and pens and crayons that our mother would buy for us, along with the kind of coarser fables and fairy tales and stories that she would share with us in the evenings, along with like the scratchy vinyl sounds that were always floating around in our house. Also along with like the elegant fabrics that our grandparents and parents used to wear that would always brush up against our skin. So yeah, those were our early big loves. In standard 7 or grade 9, as it's now called, I remember a friend of mine, we're still good friends, like now 34 years later. We started a magazine. It was like a 10-pager. And I remember even before I knew exactly what it was, I called myself the creative director. And so after that, I was pretty determined to be in the creative field. So I even moved schools so I could study art. And then I moved to Rhodes University, applied there for a fine arts degree, and found ourselves in Grahamstown. Did anyone else go to the best university in South Africa? Whoop! Hi. Cool.
So, I think my sister's a better speaker than I am. Anyway, so I went to Rhodes to study journalism because when I was in high school, my teacher told me I was a good listener and a good storyteller, but I actually wanted to get into music. I just, didn't know how to, I didn't even know what that job was called, but I used to watch shows like Party of Five and Felicity. And, the music was just so captivating, and I wish I was that person who was putting the music, the soundtrack to all the scenes. But I just actually wanted to get away from home as quickly as possible and join my sister who was at Rhodes already. And then during orientation week, I saw this flyer. They wanted DJs for the university station. And I thought, God, I could never do that. But I really, really wanted to do it. So I went and I, told everyone that I love music. I told them what the concept of my show would be. I wouldn't talk, I would just play music. And I got the gig. And I started out as a librarian and then as a producer on the graveyard shift. And then I got my own show between 9 and 12 on a Friday. But it meant I had to skip my Dawnies. In journalism, you had these double lectures on a Friday morning at 7 o'clock. And I thought, well, fuck it. I've got a show, 9 to 12. It's more important. And yeah, that's what I did. And I think it was actually one of the best decisions I made. I had to ignore that voice in my head that said, you can't do it. You don't want to be in the limelight. And I just had to do it, and I did. So for the next 3 years, while I was at Rhodes, I was DJing in my spare time and also doing outside broadcasting as well with a friend of mine. We called ourselves the Wing Masters. It was fun. Yeah, so then when I graduated from Rhodes, I waitressed for a year whilst I was looking for a real job. And so a friend of mine's father, William Sanderson Mayer, I think I don't know if he actually still writes for the Argus, but he had a company called Legal Briefs, which was essentially a newsletter that went out to the legal fraternity. I had to sit at 5 o'clock in the morning and trawl the news for anything that was related to law, and it would get edited and put into this newsletter. It would go out to the legal fraternity. And then one day I saw this flyer in the newspaper, and it was advertising for, it was with independent newspapers, it was a graduate course. And I applied, it was in Cape Town, I moved to Cape Town, I got in, and I trained as a sub and a layout artist and a reporter.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I spent a couple of years sewing my own clothes, and then when I finished my fine art degree, I kind of was at a loss of what to do, so I landed up working with a fashion designer as her assistant for a couple of months, and then I even worked in a clothing factory also for a couple of months, and I decided then that the place that I needed to be was Joburg after.
So I thought my life was going to be in Cape Town, until I was headhunted by a drum magazine. But I didn't actually stay there very long because I discovered that they were selling us dreams, really. They said they wanted to restore the title to the days of Can Timber and Henry Kumalo, and I was like, I definitely want to be a part of this team. But in reality, they actually just wanted a black version of You and His Genoot. I left there. But at the same time, I was called by Elle magazine to come and join their team. And I started working there as a features writer. In terms of Zanele and I, our careers were kind of merging. We were both in the same media space. I was in Johannesburg, she was in Cape Town, but we were traveling back and forth for our jobs. And I remember we used to call each other, did you get invited to that travel trip? Are you coming to this event, you know? And we'd bump into each other at the various soirees, and eventually we ended up working together at Marie Claire. I was deputy editor there and she was beauty editor. And people used to ask us, you know, how can you work with your sister? Gosh, you know, aren't you competitive? Isn't it awkward?
Who is whose boss?
Who's more senior? But it actually turned out to be one of the most amazing times in both our careers. We were working together, we have the same interests, and we were also working with very close friends. Spasia was editor at the time. Matatle, who's a very good friend of ours, also was there, who she actually eventually took over from Zanele as beauty editor. So it was just, it actually felt like we were creating our own magazine. So it was also the beginning of, you know, just trying to think around maybe working together for ourselves.
Then for me, I think by then had been a beauty editor for 7 years, had been living in Joburg for about close to 10 years, and I decided that I needed a complete shift, so I decided to pack my bags and move to Barcelona to study Spanish. And of course, I was single then. I was 34 years old, so everyone at the moment at that time was reading bloody Eat, Pray, Love. So everyone thought that I was going, you know, to the Mediterranean for him. Anyway, I sold my car. I sold all of my belongings except for a few sentimental items that I gave to Zodwa for safekeeping.
She asked for them back when she came back.
Of course. Yeah, so I'd never lived overseas in my own steam, and I just needed the time. It was a sort of a sabbatical to just rethink things. But that was also a serendipitous moment because my sister then fell pregnant with her second daughter, and I felt that I needed to come back and, you know, be there for her. And Spasia also heard that I was coming back to South Africa, so she said, "Don't you want to be features editor for Marie Claire?" And I said, "Of course." And you know, when you work in a certain field, it's very difficult to move over to another one. So it was an incredible opportunity that she gave me. So I came across this word zemblanity, when we were researching exactly what it is that serendipity is. So it's the opposite of serendipity. The term comes from a writer called William Boyd, and it means the making of unhappy, unlucky, and unexpected discoveries occurring by design. So effectively, it's an unpleasant unsurprise. So we're just going to talk briefly about, you know, there are some moments where things don't always, you know, go your way.
I was in Cape Town. I was relocated. My then husband was relocated. I'm divorced now. And I was sitting in the Cape Town office and, you know, things just weren't clicking. I'd always felt such energy and such potential in Johannesburg, and all my friends were there, my networks were there, and I was just sitting in this lonely office in Cape Town. And I think I'd reached a point where I wasn't growing. I didn't feel like I was growing as an editor. And I also was very frustrated with just the pace of how print titles were making that move to digital, which I was completely obsessed with. I knew it was time to leave. I think one of the highlights of working in magazines, so I remember starting the Marie Claire blog. It was their first kind of digital or foray into digital, and I had done it without permission, number one. I had done it without money because, you know, in magazines they never have any budgets, and I just wanted to do more of that. And City Press came along and they were doing this magazine called I, and they said digital. I was like, yes. But then once again I was sold dreams and I didn't stay there very long. And then I went into freelancing for about a year and moved back to Johannesburg, another relocation, and I was approached by Chris Roper to take up the editorship as arts and culture editor. A lot of the career paths that I've chosen have just kind of organically moved into my space. I've never had like a 5 to 10 year plan, but I've always had a sense of the direction that I wanted to move into. And I guess the more you think about it and the more you talk about it, the more you attract the right kind of opportunities.
Okay, so I'm now in Cape Town and working as a features editor for Marie Claire, and it was right when that like major shift that we could no longer ignore happened. So it was, now becoming print versus digital and consumer magazines versus custom magazines. And I knew, even though it was like one of the best roles I've ever had and working with an amazing team, I knew that I had to leave. So I joined a couple of digital agencies, but nothing really kind of felt quite right. So I started DJing on the side. I'd actually never played publicly before. I'd gone on a vinyl DJing course about 10 years ago, and then friends and acquaintances started inviting me to play at private events, and it was such a welcome distraction, and it kind of set the wheel turning for future gigs. Then I got a job in another digital agency, and they asked for me to move to Joburg so I could be closer to the client. I wasn't very happy about it because when I moved back, I chose Cape Town because it was most like Barcelona, and I wanted the same kind of experience. But I was very happy to move to Joburg in the sense that my two sisters were living here, so I could be close to them and my two nieces.
My sister and I, we DJ together now at quite a few events, but we'd never actually thought of playing together until a friend of ours who started this festival called Little Gig asked us to play together. It was the inaugural festival, and she sold it as this very visual festival, and I think the theme was couples. And she said, let's play with the whole concept of couples. Why don't you braid your hair and then you can plait it together and then you can DJ, and we were like, no. But it was really the start of us, this duo that we have. We still don't have a name, we still go by Zanele and Zodwa. But it also kind of reinforced that idea that we should be working together and working for ourselves together. And we started brainstorming concepts. One of them was an upmarket hair salon, because there really are so few in Johannesburg. As a black person, it's just we put up with a lot of shit, really. You'll book an appointment at 12, nobody will touch your hair until 3, you're there until 7, you leave the salon at 8. It's a nightmare. Service is bad, etc. So we wanted to plug that gap. But by the time we got our business plan together, Candy & Co. popped up, and they had the databases, they had the location, they had the reputation, so we kind of ditched that idea. We also were quite honest, and I think we kind of said to ourselves, do we really want to be in a hair salon from 5 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night? Because we'd have to be there full time, and we're quite perfectionists, so we thought, no, it's not going to work for us. And that's when we thought of a music bar.
Zodwa has generally always believed in luck. I've always thought the opposite. I remember hearing something or remembering something that Oprah once said. She said, there's no such thing as luck, there's only preparation meeting the moment of opportunity. If you weren't prepared when the opportunity showed up, nothing would have happened. So, as much as I believe in serendipity, I feel like you kind of build up your circumstances so you can get yourself to a place where you catch a lucky break, and that's actually when the magic happens. Also, I know this is going to sound completely immodest now, but we've been told by a couple of people that we aren't the kind of women who shout very loudly about ourselves, but we're learning that that's not necessarily the best approach. So we've kind of gotten better at social media, and it's been amazing because just even organically, as we've done things that we really love and working with people that we love and respect, people have noticed, they've been interested, and they've wanted to partner up with us, which has been incredible. And they've also pushed us much further than we've been comfortable to go. Then another serendipitous moment happened during a South African Fashion Week. I bumped into Gary Cotterill, and we decided that I think we'd watched like 2 shows, and then we decided to drink champagne and skip the others. And so we sat and we chatted for hours and we talked about our future plans. And as it emerged, he had very similar ideas to the one we had for the music bar. So he said, no, I've got this perfect location, which was next door at Workshop Newtown. So the next day, this was Saturday, so the next day, Sunday morning, I went with him to view the location. Then I called Zodwa and I was like, this is perfect. We met up, so it was like the three of us. We decided that we were going to do it. We came up with a name. We decided that we needed particular skills, so we brought in two other partners, and then Town was born. It was amazing because we knew that we were going in blind. None of us had restaurant experience, but we also didn't have very unrealistic expectations. I think what Zodwa and I are very important is just loving what we do. And we've never really been about making loads of money. Of course, everyone needs to make money and we need to make money as well, but that's never our focus. We're just getting better at actually making things come to fruition in terms of what we love. And then just a quick note about vision boards here. I know they get such a bad rep, but for us, for Zodwa and I, they've worked. So for the last couple of years, we've been meeting up with friends and we hold dinners and we grab all of our magazines. Some, obviously not all of them because you don't want to cut up particular ones, but so we sit, we also drink lots of champagne and we talk about our future plans, and we found that it works for us. So we do it every quarter, and it's just a great way of kind of creating a clear picture of what it is that you want or don't want in your life. Just small pictures from town, which no longer exists. How long did we run it for? I think it was a year.
So we came up with this concept, and it really just encapsulated all our interests and sensibilities. It was a very modern space, great food, great flavors, an older crowd, and the five of us kind of brought into the business what we felt it needed. There was the accountant, media and PR, what's the other
Chefing.
one? Food, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
chef. And I think we had to come up with a concept in 2 months, and the third month it had to be up and running. Unfortunately, we all had full-time jobs, and the space just needed more time from us, which we didn't have much of. And so we decided to bring in a management company to run the place for us. But as it happens, the further away you move from a fledgling business, the more control you lose of it, and the concept just became corrupted, and our chef became quite unhappy, and we started hanging out there less and less. So we would have to organize these events to try and get people to come to the space, but we didn't want to go ourselves. So telling our friends, come, but we wanted to go somewhere else. So that's when we realized that it was time to shut it down, because if we didn't want to be there, how could we expect other people to want to be there? So some good lessons. We had an amazing time. We had great support from our friends, but it was short-lived, and we weren't scared of just ending it. I think we closed it in December last year.
And then another serendipitous moment came by when I started dating the owner of the tennis club. Nothing like sleeping with the boss to get you favors. And so he invited Zodwa and I to start a concept called Sunday 143. So it's a much easier concept than we had with Town. Also, we have much smaller overheads, and the risk is also like smaller. It's much easier and more manageable for us. So
So currently I work for a company called Liberty Africa. It's a youth content agency. We also train young people in digital marketing and in multimedia, and then we find work for them, and I head up digital. So I leverage the platforms that we publish that the young people create content for, and we come up with digital campaigns, etc. I also have side hustles. I don't think many people don't have side hustles, because your job doesn't necessarily give you everything that you need it to give you. But speaking more on the concept of Sunday 143, it's on a Sunday. It's once a month, and it's meant to be about taking back your Sundays, because I think you always have that fear of Monday coming.
Carte blanche music.
It's actually, you only get 2 days in a weekend. If you're going to spend one of them moping, it's such a waste. So we invite our favorite DJs to come and play. There's food on sale, a few drinks, and it's not supposed to be a turn up. It's supposed to be a wind down. The next one is on the 25th of June, and we've organized a pop-up element, so you can come and shop, and there's going to be jewelry and clothing, etc. And 143, a lot of people ask, if you don't have that hip-hop or R&B kind of background, 143 stands for I love you. So it's essentially Sunday I love you. There's one letter in I, there are 4 in love, and 3 in you. So I had to think about that. So yeah, that's what we're doing currently.
So a lot of you, or a few of you, might know that I was retrenched from Grazia as the editor at the end of last year, and I think for me personally, it felt like even like heavier than my car accident, but like both my heart and ego were broken. But I know that in the future, I'm going to look back at that moment and go, that's definitely why that happened. And then currently, just to give my company a bit of a whoop whoop, I'm back at Media 24, and I work for W24, which is rebranded from Women 24. It is one of the leading digital publications, lifestyle publications for women in South Africa. And we're launching a new project in the next couple of months. I can't really say what it is right now, but I can't wait to share more details with you. Yeah, so that's where I'm at the moment. Just to kind of share with you we've got 7 key takeouts from our journey, and also just pulling in serendipitous moments from this talk this morning.
So number 1, I think one of the most important is trusting your gut and following your instinct. And even if things don't go as you've planned, I think it doesn't mean that your instinct was wrong. It just means that, it just wasn't meant to be. And there are risks that you'll take that aren't necessarily calculated, but they'll teach you a great deal more than you knew before you took them. Number 2 is it's great working with friends, but I think you need to make sure your business relationships with your friends are complementary rather than just fun. Somebody needs to know the money, somebody has to do the tax and the accounting, and it's important to make clear from the outset who's responsible for what. Number 3, don't put your name to things you don't believe in, even if they make you pots of money, because I think as creatives, fundamentally, we are driven and find joy from a more satisfying place. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. When you have an idea that makes your heart beat faster when you talk about it, don't talk to too many people about it. Put in the time and the work and quietly take it to market. And for God's sakes, don't use your own money to bring it to life. Number 5, not all ideas have to be big ideas. Or even permanent, actually. So, these concepts, these pop-up concepts are so marvelous. Even if you do it for a couple of years or a few months, you experiment with things and you change things up. It's incredibly rewarding and satisfying. Number 6, the more you do, the more you can do. People always ask us where we get the energy and how do we fit it all in. And I think when you want to, you do. And number 7 is don't wait until you have the perfect branding or logo, because that's not going to make or break your business. I think those are our 7 key takeouts.
Okay, so the music that you've been hearing in the background was a playlist created by us, inspired by this session, and it's available on YouTube. It's called, if you search for Creative Mornings, #Sunday143, you can take a listen. And then also, if you'd like to get in touch with either or both of us, you can mail me at zanele@gmail.com. I know Ross and Leanne will send out correspondence, or Valentine at gmail.com. That's ZKValentine at gmail.com, not ZK, excuse me. And yeah, so we're also on social media, basically on all of the platforms, It's Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat.